It began quietly in the forgotten margins of our collective memory, lurking in the shadows of archives and the dust-covered corners of antique shops. I did not stumble upon these revelations in the sanitized pages of state-sanctioned history books or the peer-reviewed rigidity of academic journals, which are often gatekept by institutions designed to maintain the status quo. Instead, I found the truth in the fragile, undeniable reality of photographs. These were not the digitized, manipulated images of the modern era, but textured sepia prints, daguerreotypes, and tintypes that carried the physical weight of the past. These images made every detail feel tangible, immediate, and yet hauntingly wrong. They depicted a version of humanity that simply should not exist according to our linear narrative of biological limits. They showed us the giants. Then, quite suddenly, the narrative breaks. They were gone. They did not vanish gradually through the slow process of genetic drift. They stopped appearing in the visual record around 1850. The photographic record undergoes a seismic, inexplicable shift, and the giants disappear from the streets, the construction sites, and the family portraits. This profound absence corresponds precisely with another historical anomaly that has been scrubbed from our textbooks: the rapid, inexplicable disappearance of Tartaria itself. The correlations between the vanishing of a global, high-technology civilization and the extinction of its massive citizens are too synchronized to be merely coincidental. The immediate reflex of the skeptical mind is to categorize these figures into safe, understood boxes, but these are not circus performers put on display for amusement. They are not genetic outliers suffering from pituitary gigantism or acromegaly, conditions which leave the skeleton frail and the body in a state of structural failure. The individuals in these photographs are the picture of robust health. They are proportionate, muscular, and poised. They are often captured in groups, suggesting a stable population rather than isolated mutations. They stand anywhere from 7 to 9 feet tall, sometimes towering higher, appearing as fully integrated functional members of a society built to accommodate them. We see them standing with families, their hands resting gently on the shoulders of people we would consider normal size. Yet the size difference is not treated as a spectacle. It is treated as mundane. We see them working in construction, hauling stones that would require modern machinery to lift. We see them wearing standard clothing, tailored perfectly to their colossal frames. A particularly striking photograph from Siberia, dated roughly to 1870, captures a scene that defies explanation. 3 men standing beside a 12-foot carved wooden door frame. 2 of the men are of average height, perhaps 5 feet 8 inches. The third man, however, is a colossus. He is not standing on a box. His feet are planted firmly on the cobblestones. To enter the building, he must physically duck to clear the header of a door that dwarfs his companions. The expression on his face is not one of pride or performance. He looks bored, perhaps tired from a day's labor. It is a snapshot of a mundane reality that no longer exists. Similarly, an 1883 image of American railroad workers presents a visual impossibility that historians refuse to address. The photo shows a crew of men, rugged and dirt-stained, standing along a newly laid track. Among them are men who tower over their colleagues by 3 full feet. Their shoulders are twice as broad. Their limbs are thick with functional muscle. Their casual posture suggests they are simply working, not performing for a camera. If these were medical anomalies, they would not be laying heavy rail ties in the scorching sun. They would be in hospitals. The sheer ordinariness of these images makes their content extraordinary. It forces us to confront the fact that the normal range of human height was once vastly different, and that this biological diversity was erased in a blink of historical time. These photographs exist in abundance until a certain point in the 19th century, and then, as if a master switch was flipped, they stop. Where did they go? How does a population of thousands vanish without a single monument or grave? The phenomenon of the mud flood becomes impossible to ignore in this context. When we look at the urban centers of the 19th century, from Moscow to Seattle, we see the undeniable evidence of a cataclysm. We see cities buried under feet of inexplicable sediment. We see grand buildings where the first floors have been converted into basements, with windows half buried by the rising earth. We see streets that have been raised, covering the original entrances of structures designed to be entered at a much lower level. This catastrophic burial event, occurring in a staggered fashion throughout the mid to late 1800s, aligns perfectly with the disappearance of the giants. I asked myself a terrifying question. What if the mud flood was a reset? What if it was a deliberate erasure of not just the infrastructure of the old world, but the people who maintained it? We have the shells of Tartarian buildings, the massive capitals, and the star forts, but the guardians are gone. With them went the operational knowledge of the civilization they protected. The mud did not just bury the streets, it buried the evidence of a symbiotic relationship between different scales of humanity. The architecture itself screams the truth. The buildings we attribute to the Greco-Roman revival suggest a level of sophisticated technology, free energy harvesting, atmospheric resonance, and acoustic levitation that far exceeds the supposed capacity of the horse and buggy 1800s. This tech seemed designed for operators of an enhanced physical scale. Look at the doors of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., or the massive portals of St. Isaac's Cathedral in St. Petersburg. These doors are 20, 30 feet high. The handles are often placed at a height inconvenient for a 6-foot man, but perfect for someone standing 9 feet tall. Why would a civilization of average-sized people waste immense resources creating heavy doors that are difficult to open and allow heat to escape? They wouldn't. They built them for the giants. Perhaps these giants were the keepers of embodied knowledge that could not be written down. Perhaps their physiology allowed them to interact with the atmospheric energy grid in ways we cannot comprehend. Their sudden disappearance without documentation suggests a high-level orchestration. Historical records from this era are full of strange silences. Census data from the mid-19th century often vanishes or is lost in fires. Hospital records end abruptly. The surviving documentation often contradicts itself, presenting impossible timelines for the construction of massive stone structures by populations that barely had enough food to eat, let alone the logistical capacity to quarry and transport granite blocks weighing hundreds of tons. Furthermore, the photographic record shows signs of active tampering. We see early examples of manipulation, where crude cropping or painting over negatives was used to normalize heights. We see group photos, where the heads of the tallest individuals are suspiciously blurred or cut out of the frame. This systematic effort implies a global coordination that defies belief, a conspiracy so vast that it encompasses every major government established after the reset. Everywhere we find the remnants of Tartarian architecture, those glorious red brick power stations we call factories, those domed energy collectors we call capitals. We find this gaping hole in the human record. It is as if society collectively agreed to forget, or was forced to forget through trauma. The complex atmospheric electricity and water purification systems of the old world required expertise to run. Giants, with their greater stature and strength, could reach components in high vaulted ceilings and manipulate heavy mechanical levers. Without them, functional technology became inexplicable architecture. The distinct metal spires and antennas became crosses and lightning rods. The mud flood likely provided the cover for this erasure. In the chaos of a liquefaction event, where cities were drowning in soil, memory is malleable. If giants were targeted for specific removal, the catastrophe allowed the survivors to be convinced they never existed. We might be living in a dark age, mistaking our slow recovery for linear progress. We look at our smartphones and believe we are at the pinnacle of achievement, yet we cannot replicate the masonry of the pyramids or the acoustics of the great cathedrals. The giants were the bridge to that lost Tartarian knowledge, and that bridge was burned. We are technological orphans, scavenging in the ruins of our ancestors' mansion, struggling to rediscover lost wisdom while claiming we built the house ourselves. The questions remain. Why do the photos stop? Who benefited from the removal of the giants? The absence where giants should be is evidence itself, a negative space shaped like the truth. When you walk into a room designed for a giant, you feel the emptiness. The scale is wrong. The guardians are gone, and we must ask what else we have been taught to forget. We walk through cities built by giants, oblivious to their shadows, stepping over the buried first floors of a history we are told is a fantasy. The mud is deep, layers upon layers of indoctrination, but we must keep digging. The photographs do not lie. The lens captures the light as it was. Only the silence lies. It is time to break that silence, to look at the bored giant in the doorway and acknowledge that he was real, and that his disappearance is the greatest crime in human history. To understand the scale of this deception, one must look closely at the founding narratives of major cities. In almost every case, from Seattle to Chicago to Sydney, the official story claims that a ragged group of settlers arrived, and within a span of 20 years, erected massive stone edifices and sewage systems. They claim this was done with handsaws and unskilled labor. This narrative collapses under scrutiny. The logistics of placing millions of tons of stone in such short time frames are impossible even with modern technology. But if we reintroduce the giants, the impossible becomes plausible. A workforce of beings with superior strength and perhaps knowledge of acoustic levitation could have achieved these feats. The giants were not just citizens, they were the builders, the engineers, the heavy lifters of the Tartarian civilization. When we view the great fires that swept through these cities, Chicago, Seattle, Boston, we must view them with suspicion. Were these fires accidents, or were they controlled demolitions meant to hide the evidence of the old world? These fires often burned hot enough to melt stone, yet we are told they were fueled by wood. After the fires, the rebuilding was likely an excavation and rebranding. The giants who built the original structures were gone, and the inheritors, the parasitic elite who took over the empty cities, needed to destroy the evidence of the true creators. They kept the shells of the magnificent buildings, repurposed them as courthouses and banks, and claimed the credit. But they couldn't keep the giants. They were too conspicuous. They had to be removed physically and historically. We must also consider the psychological impact of living among giants. In the old world, it appears there was harmony. The photos show no fear. But for the usurpers, the new controllers of the post-reset world, the existence of a superior humanoid race would be a threat. How can you subjugate a population if a significant portion of them are physically powerful enough to crush your enforcers? The elimination of the giants was a strategic necessity for the implementation of the current control grid. By reducing humanity to a uniform, smaller size, the controllers ensured that resistance would be manageable. They homogenized the human experience, breeding out the outliers and the majestic. The orphan train phenomenon of the 19th century further supports the theory of a reset. Hundreds of thousands of children were transported across America and Europe, their parents gone, their histories erased. Where did all these orphans come from? If the parents, the giants and the Tartarians, were wiped out in the mud flood or subsequent purges, the children would be left behind to be re-educated. These children were the blank slates upon which the false history was written. They were taught that the massive buildings around them were built by their grandfathers with chisels, not by a lost race of giants with advanced tech. They were taught that the mud-filled streets were just grading issues, not the result of a global cataclysm. As we dig deeper, we find oddities in the clothing and armor preserved in museums. We find swords that are too heavy for a modern man to lift, let alone swing in battle. We find muskets with stocks so long and triggers so large that they are unusable by a person of average stature. Curators label these ceremonial, a convenient dismissal of anything that challenges the narrative. But why manufacture thousands of functional, battle-hardened display pieces? It makes no sense. These were the weapons of the giants. In Japan, the samurai armor attributed to legendary figures is massive. In Europe, Maximilian armor sets have proportions that do not fit the modern frame. The physical evidence is locked away in glass cases, labeled with lies. The suppression of this truth requires constant maintenance. It requires a media apparatus that mocks the idea of giants, relegating them to fairy tales. We are allowed to see giants in Jack and the Beanstalk, but not in history books. This is psychological containment. By placing the truth in the realm of fiction, the controllers inoculate the public against recognizing reality. When we see a photo of a giant, our programmed response is fake because we have been conditioned to believe such beings belong only in stories. But the camera, the primitive, honest camera of the 1800s, captured them before the conditioning was complete. It captured the transition period, the twilight of the giants before the long night of the 20th century. I have spent years enlarging these digital scans, searching for signs of forgery. In modern digital art, you can see the inconsistencies. But in these old tintypes, the lighting is perfect. The shadows cast by the giants match the shadows of the normal-sized people. The depth of field is consistent. These are not fakes. They are evidence of a crime scene. The crime was the genocide of a race, and the cover-up was the invention of modern history. Consider the layout of the star forts found all over the world. We are told these are military fortifications, yet their geometry is fractal, cymatic, and precise, often involving water features. They resemble circuitry more than bunkers. If the giants were the operators of this global circuitry, their size might have been a function of their environment. Perhaps the atmospheric pressure was different before the reset. If the reset involved a change in the atmospheric composition, a firmament breach, or a weather weapon, it might have made the biological existence of giants impossible. They may have suffocated in the new, thinner air. The mud flood might have been the physical manifestation of this atmospheric collapse. The tragedy is not just that they died, but that we have forgotten them. We have forgotten that we once shared this planet with elder brothers of immense capability. We look at the statues of antiquity, the Egyptian pharaohs depicted as twice the size of their subjects, and call it hieratic scaling. But what if it was literal realism? What if the kings were giants? The photos from the 1800s suggest that this lineage survived until recently. The divine right of kings might have been based on the physical reality that the rulers were literally a different breed of human, the remnants of the Tartarian builders. Now, we inhabit their hollowed-out cities, like hermit crabs living in shells that are too big for us. We marvel at the high ceilings of our libraries, feeling a sense of awe we cannot articulate. That awe is a genetic memory. It is the memory of a time when we looked up at our protectors. Now, we look down at our screens. The loss of the giants is the loss of our connection to the sublime. We have been shrunk, not just in history, but in spirit. We accept mediocrity because we have erased the examples of greatness. But the cracks in the dam are widening. The internet has allowed these images to circulate faster than the gatekeepers can scrub them. People are waking up to the anomalies. They are asking why the basement windows are buried. They are asking why the doors are so big. They are asking why the founders look like they are posing in front of ruins rather than building them. The resonance of the truth is vibrating through the collective consciousness. We are remembering the giants. We must continue to gather the evidence. Every photo saved from an estate sale, every architectural blueprint that doesn't add up is a weapon against the amnesia. We are the archaeologists of the recent past, digging through the mental mud. The giants may be gone, but their shadows remain. They are cast long across our civilization. It is time we turned around, looked at the source of the shadow, and acknowledged the reality of what was lost. The Tartarian giants were real. Their disappearance is the key to unlocking the true history of our world, a history of stolen technology and reset civilizations. The silence is breaking. The mud is washing away, and the giants are waiting for us to see them again. This investigation is far from over. The more we scrutinize the official narrative, the more it crumbles. We are compelled to look at the world map with fresh eyes. The vast expanse of Tartary that appeared on maps until the mid-19th century was not a mistake. It was a sovereign territory that likely hosted these populations. When Tartaria was wiped from the maps, the giants were wiped from reality. The geopolitical maneuvering of the 19th century, the Great Game, the Civil War, may have been theaters of conflict designed to distract from the dismantling of this global order. While we were taught to focus on the battles of men, the war against the giants was being waged in the background. We must also question the narrative of evolutionary progress that posits we are the tallest, healthiest humans to ever live. The data contradicts this. The skeletons found in mounds across North America, often reported in local newspapers in the 1800s and then whisked away by the Smithsonian, speak of a race that was physically superior. double rows of teeth, immense cranial capacity, heights of 8 to 10 feet. These reports are in the archives. They are primary sources. The Smithsonian's role in suppressing these finds is well documented. Why hide the bones? Because the bones prove the photos are real. The bones prove that the current model of history is a fabrication designed to keep us small. As we move forward, we must adopt a new methodology of history. We can no longer trust the written word of the victors. We must trust the visual evidence, the architectural anomalies, and the intuition that tells us something is fundamentally wrong. The giants are the key. They are the loose thread that, when pulled, unravels the entire tapestry of lies. They challenge our understanding of biology, gravity, and technology. They are the ghosts in the machine of modern history, haunting the edges of the frame, waiting for us to notice them. The mud flood was the mechanism, but the motive was control. A population of giants cannot be easily controlled. A population that remembers free energy cannot be metered. The reset was about resource capture and population management. By eliminating the giants, the controllers eliminated the guardians of the old tech. They left us with the wires, but took away the power source. They left us with the cathedrals, but took away the knowledge of how to make them sing. We are left with a choice. We can continue to sleepwalk through the ruins, accepting the official plaques that lie to our faces, or we can embrace the madness of the truth. The truth is that we are a species with amnesia, living in the aftermath of a crime so massive it encompassed the globe. The truth is that the giants were our brothers, our builders, our partners. By remembering them, by circulating their images, we are engaging in an act of rebellion. We are reclaiming our history. We are digging out the basement windows. We are opening the massive doors. The giants are gone, but we are still here. And as long as we have eyes to see and minds to question, their legacy cannot be completely erased. The photographs are the witnesses. The architecture is the testimony. The verdict is ours to deliver.